Okay, good evening. This is a special meeting of the Board of Trustees. It's December 18th, 2018. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Certainly. Trustee Arnett. Trustee Holder.
Here.
Trustee Gale.
Here.
Trustee Kotinek.
Here.
Trustee Kupler. Trustee McCarty.
Here.
President Livingston.
Here. And with that, we have a quorum. Mr. Clerk, if you could lead us in the pledge.
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Trustees, we have a single item to consider for a vote this evening as it relates to the settlement agreement with Lehigh Hansen. Lehigh Hansen officials confirmed on Friday, December 14th, that Hansen agrees to the terms of the proposed settlement agreement. In a minute, I'm going to ask Mark Birkeland to run through the provisions of the agreement. We will then have a motion which will read to approve a resolution approving a settlement agreement regarding the 50th Street Storm Sewer Flood Control Project. You'll see on the agenda there is an item for closed session. We're not necessarily planning on needing that, but should it arise, we have the option and ability to do that. And I would ask that as Mark goes through the provisions, if we could wait till the end to ask questions, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to ask those questions and or provide comments as that moves on. And we'll talk about next steps and those sort of things. So with that, I would turn it to Mark Birkeland. If you could, Mark, move through the provisions, and then we'll take up the conversation from there.
And as President Livingston suggested, I will give you just the key points, and then you can ask questions as you see fit. One of the first things to know is that as a result of entering into the settlement agreement, the pending litigation will be set aside. It will not be dismissed because if something happens during the course of construction, we want the court to still be involved in it if necessary. And then if everything goes well and everything is completed, then the lawsuit will be dismissed. Hansen will contribute a total of $9.1 million toward the cost of the new pipe on the east side of East Avenue. That pipe is referred to as the North Route pipe because that's the route that the parties settled on as being feasible for this construction. That $9.1 million will be deposited in two batches, all within the coming few weeks. That money then is applied, is put into an escrow account, which will be managed by a professional escrow entity and will be used to pay for construction costs. Hansen also will contribute funds to the village in the approximate amount of $368,000 for the village to use for its 50th Street Stormwater Flood Relief Project. That money is, in essence, to help close the gap that was created by escalating construction costs that the village will bear as a result of not having already commenced the 50th Street project. The construction of the North Route pipe depends, which is the east side of East Avenue project, depends on actions by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. The MWRD will make a decision in the coming months whether to move forward with its analysis of a piece of property that can be developed into a detention basin. That detention basin is a key element of this entire project because it would be into that basin that the village's stormwater would flow, and as we know, it would be very substantially bigger amount of water flowing through that pipe than is currently flowing through the existing pipe. So what that means is that, and the MWRD, by the way, is actively pursuing its studies of the feasibility of the detention basin project, and everyone is optimistic that project will eventually move forward. So what that means is that the village will be able to commence what's called pre-construction activity at the same time as the MWRD begins its design of a detention facility. And pre-construction activities include such things as acquiring required permits, acquiring rights of entry or rights of way or other types of property rights that are necessary, for example, to go underneath a railroad. And so that will happen simultaneously with the MWRD's development of engineering design for a detention facility. Then, if and when the MWRD determines that it is going to build the detention facility and goes out for bids and then awards a contract for construction, the village will commence construction of that north route pipe. The construction of the 50th Street Storm Sewer project also can begin at that point, depending on the best, most efficient way for these elements to be constructed. So the 50th Street project will be coordinated with the North Route project, which will be coordinated with the detention basin being constructed by the MWRD. Hanson agrees in the settlement agreement that it will cooperate as needed in all of these elements. If any element of the process requires additional negotiation or work or communications with other public entities, Hanson will be part of those changes. Those are the key elements of how the project will move forward. There are many details in the document itself, as you know, and if you have any questions about them, Ryan and Andre and Tom and I are here to help answer them.
Thank you, Mark. And again, we'll open it up for questions in a moment. The core of this agreement does not lose sight of what we want to do here. We want to begin pre-construction work, begin working more directly with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, MWRD, and the agreement allows us to do that with a level of certainty in terms of funding streams and know what we're planning on. And that was a big hurdle to achieve. So with this settlement, and I do believe it is time for settlement, we have a sense or a path to work through our own good process that LaGrange is good at doing as it relates to infrastructure. It also, from Hanson's perspective, the end result for them is the outflow, current outflow, at some point, once we're completed, ceases to move into the quarry as it does right now. So the key next step will be working with the MWRD. We're going to ask Ryan to come back in January and give a more technical engineering status on where we're at. This involves bidding and the things that you're very familiar with in order to carry out a project. And we'll have a keener sense of that timing as we work with the MWRD. I also want to thank Mark Birkeland and Andre and Ryan and the village team for their persistence. And I also want to thank the village board. This has involved a lot of extra sessions of the village board, many and several over a period of extended years. And you know, I think it's something that we all think is worth fighting for. This village takes the long view. We're good at planning, we're good at executing, and we don't do things ripped from the headlines. We take the long view, and this is very important to a great many residents. I see Mike Matucci here tonight. He is a resident that really did lead on this matter, and has many residents that count on him. When you raise your hand, sometimes you become the focal of communication. So we appreciate Mike being a liaison in some sense as well. And his reward, of course, is he's now in the Community Economic Development Commission. So, but I do want to thank Mike and the residents for their patience. The other people, should we be able to move forward tonight after your consideration, we should thank certainly U.S. Representative Dan Lipinski. If we're not calling him about this matter or his team, they're calling us. How's it going? What's next? What can we do? It's very important, especially in these big infrastructure projects. Mariana Staropoulos, the president of the MWRD, has been very public and very supportive of us once we were able to bring the MWRD up to speed. That's going to be very important going forward. So we thank her for not only her enthusiasm, but her follow-up and actions. We also thank our good neighbor, Jeff Tobolski, the mayor of McCook. As stormwater goes, these things are often regional in nature. We're giving, we're getting, we're passing on, and Mayor Tobolski has been critical in bringing us together, in facilitating discussions with Hanson at some point, as well as just making sure we're all working together. So we appreciate that as well. This agreement has milestones. These milestones will be measured in months and years and not days and weeks. And we know that. That's infrastructure. That's roads. That's pipes. It takes a while. And we've been a pay-as-you-go village. And once we get the amount of revenue, we move on with the project. So we believe we've got the revenue and the plan, and we're going to have to be precise as we move forward, and I'm confident we can do that. So with that, why don't we open it up for questions and comments. We don't have a motion on the floor at this point, but we don't need one at the moment for anything Mark might have said or anything in the agreement. Questions or comments? Trustee Kotinek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll actually direct this question to Ryan, just for the residents that are following this either in the news or on the screen. Assuming everything moves forward positively with MWRD, with our bidding, permitting, et cetera, can you talk through at a very high level expectation of timeline from, breaking ground to final completion?
Sure. Well, I think that the first step would be, from a broad scale, the first step is to complete the detention facility. That will take approximately 18 months to design. We expect that the connecting pipe would probably take another 12 months to design and build, and then the village's project can start thereafter. So we're looking probably at somewhere between a 2 to 3, 4 year period before the village's system comes online.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kotinek. Thank you, Mike.
I want to ask a little more on that timeline. So when, given that time is not our friend with regard to the inflation of the cost of the project, when do you think we could go out to bid and secure a bid to lock down the price for our South Basin sewer improvement project?
Sure. So the village's process for going out to bid is that our project, as I spoke about first, you know, there's an ordinal ranking in terms of which project has to happen first.
Right.
The village's bid process would have to occur close to when the village's construction is going to occur for its project. So the village's project would be most likely bid, would be the last of the 3 projects to be bid. It wouldn't, you know, the village can't go out to bid right now as contractors would not be available or willing to provide a bid. Also, the scope of work for the project is still being refined, and so those components have to be completed first before the village would be able to go out to bid. So most likely, in several years, the village would be able to go out to bid for its project.
So 3 or more. So a total of 5 years from when this, over 5 years, almost 6 years from when this odyssey started.
I would offer that that could be one of the scenarios, but there's a lot of timelines that have yet to be determined as the scope of work for the project is still being refined by both MWRD, the village, and other stakeholders.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Holder. Trustee McCarty.
Following along on that same line of questionings, and this is probably a little going both ways here. In reading through this, it clearly says we cannot increase the flow into the quarry during this time of that we're building, right?
That's correct.
Could we not build our new sewers now as long as we restrict the flow so nothing new comes in? So we don't have to wait 3 years to get pricing? Is there anything, well, let me ask it more this way. Is there anything in this document that restricts us from doing that?
No.
Is there anything from an engineering standpoint that would restrict us from doing that?
Yeah, so the document talks about the rate and volume of flow going to the quarry. One of the challenges is that there's a area of the village that currently drains through the 54-inch pipe into the quarry. The village's project is intended to connect other depressional areas to that pipe. That was the original plan of that project. And therefore, even though we could restrict the water and we could restrict the rate, there would be additional volume from those additional areas that would be connected to the pipe. Therefore, we wouldn't be able to move forward with our project because we would be adding volume. So therefore, we have to have another outlet for the water, meaning that the detention basin has to come online, the north route pipe has to be built, and then at that point, the village can construct its portion of its project to connect into the connecting pipe to the detention reservoir.
When we're done, are we restricted on how much we can send through that pipe up to the new detention facility?
No. One of the important components of how we looked at this proposed reroute was to make sure that the benefits being provided by this reroute would be the same or greater than the benefits of connecting to our existing 54-inch pipe.
Thank you, Trustee McCarty. Other questions? Trustee Kukla?
I guess mine is more comments. I do appreciate and want to formally acknowledge the help and assistance from all the elected leaders and our staff that obviously has done a tremendous amount of work on this project, and President Livingston, who has really spearheaded this, and I'm not sure there's anybody else who could have got us from point A to point B. So I do want to make sure that that's all acknowledged. On the negative side, I do have a hard time getting over, to me, this project should be viewed as a win-win with the quarry and the village. The village needed a place to put their water, and the quarry wanted water not to go into their quarry. But it seems like it's taken kicking, dragging, maybe even more violence to get them over to the line. And I just have a hard time calling them good neighbors at this point. And that's frustrating. I've yet to have it explained why this, we told them that we wanted to do a project, and instead of working with us to get to this project, they filed a lawsuit against us to stop the project. And because they were wrong, they're paying, or somebody on their behalf is paying a substantial amount of money. And even after acknowledging that they were wrong and that they should, or I suppose they formally don't acknowledge they're wrong, but after agreeing to pay a substantial amount of money, they just were not willing to work with us to get this resolved. At least it doesn't appear from my end. So I did want to make that comment.
Thank you, Trustee Kukler. Trustee Gale?
Thank you, Mr. President. So Ryan, going back to the north route pipe, that's our responsibility though to construct that. Is that right?
Within the agreement, it is most likely going to be the village's portion, to coordinate that project with Hanson and with MWRD towards its construction.
And then I had I guess maybe this is a question for Andre or maybe Lou, with respect to the 50th Street project. The funds for that are from our bond issue, right? And those are just simply sitting in an account somewhere right now? All right. Are those earning any interest or anything for us? Yeah. Okay. Great. And then I think the final question I had was actually for Mark. Maybe just for, I'm an attorney, I understand the risks and rewards of settlement versus not. Maybe you could just walk through at a high level, like why you would settle a case versus perhaps not just putting your head down and plowing through. Because I see the risks and rewards, and I think it's right that we resolve it with a settlement. But maybe you could talk to that.
That's a fair and good question. There are many factors that, as you certainly know, that go into the decision making like that. Things like time, is litigating and winning or losing, and then appealing a second time, going to use as much time as it would take to negotiate a useful settlement. Is continuing to litigate, draining villages' financial resources more than it should, is gritting your teeth and understanding that your position is the better position and you should win, a risk that you should take, because if you don't win, or even if you win partially, it becomes somewhat of a loss. And of course, that there'll be a year and a half or two appeal at the first level of appellate court. So the village never desired to litigate. We were, sort of caught with the lawsuit that was filed. And so the village worked very hard, very quickly on the possibility of settling it. Hanson has a lot of resources and a lot of determination, and so we pushed through the discovery process, which was itself lengthy, and it continued that whole while of negotiating settlement. When various options appeared not to be as engineeringly feasible, then the village turned to a different direction as it needed to make sure that there wasn't any option that hadn't been fully explored and vetted. So it's matters of leverage and possibility, and in the end, settling a case always seems to be more expeditious and prudent than litigating a complicated case.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. Trustee Holder.
I too would like to thank everybody that's worked very hard on this on our team. This has been an enormous amount of work, and Tom, because this is what you do for a living, for the railroad, I mean, I agree 100% with the sentiments that I'm not sure anybody else could have done this. But Mark, you used an expression that they didn't seem willing to work with us. Man, is that an understatement. This has been as blatant abuse of the legal system by a bully, by a corporate bully, as I have ever seen. And while we are settling, we're not settling, we're being beaten into submission because they have unlimited resources as one of the largest corporations in the world, and we're just a village. They've cost us $1.8 million in just legal fees that they get to write off as a tax deduction, and that we have to take out of our pocket and not put into village resources, not put into putting more police or fire on the street, not put into the South Basin project, which is going to cost a great deal more by the time we get allowed to do it than the $12 million that we took bonds out for. This is going to be 5 years from that date. Our estimate from my firm is that average construction costs went up 18% last year, 15% this year. The amount in this document for construction cost escalation that Hanson is granting us is $348,423, 3% more than what we had budgeted. And that what we had a contract for, and we're 2 weeks from starting. This has been a bully, a corporate bully, and it is wrong what they have done. This is wrong on every level. It's beating on the little guy, it's using the courts as a weapon, it's not doing what's fair, and it's abuse of the legal system because it's supposed to be equal for all the parties. Well, wake up and smell the roses, Bill. It's equal for the guy with the most money. They can commit tortious interference. They can beat us and hold us at bay because time is on their side. Since 1992, when they broke that pipe and caused the water to go into their quarry, their own decision. Why? So they could mine more. Since then, they've made hundreds of millions of dollars mining there. And by the way, sold that quarry 3 times for more money each time. So they've made a lot of money. That quarry's obviously very valuable, and every minute they can mine there is more money for them. The $9.1 million that Hanson is contributing is not for our work on the south side of Grange to provide some relief for people like Mike sitting and the other residents that live there like Dave. But it's to reroute our storm sewer so we get it off their property. To reroute the storm sewer, which is our property, which they violated, which they destroyed in the name of making more money. It's just an absolute affront to everything that's decent, in my opinion, and not work with us? Oh, they're working us, not working with us. And we have been absolutely taken advantage of, in my opinion, in this agreement. They have no recourse when we find out that this project is going to cost not $12 million, but let's say $15, $18 million. We gave you the money towards that, $348,000. Oh, we don't have any other recourse. So that was in the agreement you signed. I'm sorry, I've gone on longer than I should, but I cannot. I'm very sorry. I know you have all worked very hard on this, really long, hard, and it's been exceptionally frustrating for you all. But I cannot lend my name to this. I cannot vote for this. I apologize to those of you that work so hard, and I know we should settle. It's because they can outlast us no matter what we do. But I cannot. This is an affront. and I cannot do it. I'm sorry.
Other questions or comments? All right, why don't we, for the purposes of discussion or future discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution approving a settlement agreement regarding the 50th Street Storm Sewer Flood Control Project.
I'll make such a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments, further discussion? Trustee McCarty.
Thank you, Trustee Holder, for expressing the frustration that most of us feel, not only on this board, across the village, the people that live in the South Basin, people that live everywhere in LaGrange, McCook, the bullies in the neighborhood. And I would love to also agree with you and not sign this, but I think more importantly tonight is to get the job done and get rolling, and hope for the best. I just can't bear the thought of giving any more money to lawyers. So, and I know there's 3 of you on here, so I'm careful about that. But I will support it begrudgingly and angrily, and just as angry as Bill about it. So thanks for expressing it. I appreciate it. And thanks for saying it for all of us.
And to follow up on Trustee McCarty, I'd say the same. That's how I feel. You know, as angry as I am with Hanson and the way they chose to litigate this matter, I believe that settlement is the right avenue at this time, and quite frankly, would have been even better 6 months ago, 9 months ago. So delaying this any longer, I don't think is going to be helpful. But I do understand Trustee Holder's position and why he feels the need to vote the way he does.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Yes, I would, certainly say that this is something we were very aggressive with. Remember, there's a third party here. It's the court. And we believe we got direction from the court, and based on our resources and the risk, and again, our core mission, which is to get that pipe going without further delay and further litigation, I believe this is the most direct hit on that in terms of doing it. So, I'll reserve my comments. We all came back early from vacations, took time off of work, and agree with Trustee Kukler. There were times 3, 6, 9 months ago where this could have been done. But I also, as I pass along these comments, want to thank Senator Durbin's office and Senator Duckworth's office. They too became involved when we explained the timing and the nature of what we were doing, and were very supportive at a key moment. All right, with that, Mr. Clerk, call a vote.
Certainly. Trustee Holder.
Nay.
Trustee Gale.
Aye.
Trustee Kotinik.
Aye.
Trustee Kukler.
Aye.
Trustee McCarty.
Aye.
And with that, the motion is approved. The agreement is approved, and we have no other matters to discuss on the agenda this evening. Our next scheduled board meeting is January the 14th, I believe. Again, I appreciate your consideration and approval. We will notify the MWRD and get going. Mr. Clerk, you're signaling.
Did you want to mention the resolution? Okay.
All right. We are resolved, and with that, would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Well said, Bill.